Hi YouTube, it's Taiwan Carr and I'm here with my review for Underground Season 2 Episode 6, and this one was all about Harriet Tubman. Before I get into the review, there are 3 channels that I want to shout out. First is Nicole Nichelle. I was trying to think of her name in my last review, but I wanted to call her Nichelle Nicole. But anyway, I will link her channel to the bottom of this review in the description bar, as well as TW23 and My Twisted Life with Poetry. All 3 of these ladies also review Underground on their channels, and they all do it a little bit differently, and I love their delivery. Nicole Nichelle is going to give you some history. This girl knows all of the history that is related to this show, and that's just so fascinating to me. And so anyway, definitely check out those ladies' channels. I will do my best to remember to link their channels in the description bar. So this episode was basically dedicated to a Harriet Tubman speech, and I'll go on and just get right into it. At the beginning of the episode, we see Harriet getting dressed and getting ready for this speech, to go and deliver this speech. And one thing that stood out to me was seeing Harriet Tubman in her partially dressed state in this corset, and you see the lashings on her back. And but I thought of her as a woman in that moment that I saw that visual of her. And what I mean by that is that for me, Harriet Tubman is someone who I admire. Everything that I read about her just makes me love her more, and appreciate what a courageous woman that she had to be at that time. But I always just kind of see her as this runner, as this woman who's helping people to freedom, as Moses. And even though I know she's a woman, I don't attribute a lot of feminine qualities and characteristics to her, even though there's this one photo that I've seen, and I'll try to find that and I guess maybe make that the thumbnail for this video if I think about it. But where she is in a beautiful dress, and probably most likely corseted, and her hair is done neatly and everything. But I just think of Harriet as more, not manly, not even masculine, but I just don't think of her as being feminine. When I think of her, I just think of that woman who's on the run, and doesn't have time to get pretty and look prim and proper. So that just for me stood out, and I don't know if it made any impact on you or anything, but to see her in the corset just made an impact. So she gets into her speech, and one of the first things that she mentions is that she grew up knowing the fear of the white man. And I mean, it's obvious as to why that would be. And I'm not going to go down everything. There weren't different scenes to go through because this was all just a speech. And I have to give thanks, props, whatever you want to call it, to everyone who puts this show on. I would have thought that this episode would have bored me. I kind of saw the advertisements like for Tub Talks. There's a take on TED Talks, which I do enjoy a TED Talk, but just to kind of see her standing there just talking, I didn't think that I would be as entertained as I was, and I was beyond entertained. I was moved and darn near to tears before the episode was over. So she goes on in her speech to also describe her mother, which she kind of described as a cunning woman, and who knew the ways of white people and who knew how to get around them. And in the description that she was giving of her mother, it reminded me of the way that Ernestine's character was written. And and there was something else that she mentioned that made me wonder if Underground, if perhaps their first decision, or maybe their first mind when they were putting this show together with the character Rosalie, were they fashioning Rosalie after Harriet? And was it kind of just an afterthought to put Harriet Tubman on in the second season? Because there are definitely a lot of similarities, but it was still a beautiful thing to see them team up and help runaways together. And she goes on to talk about how just slavery is hell, and there was just basically no other way to describe it. And she goes on to talk about how it attacks the senses, and she made you feel the pain of bondage just in those words. She talks about how bondage attacks the senses, and she goes on to say that there is no freedom whatsoever in bondage. And I think that at that point she was kind of talking about trying to figure out what freedom was and why people wanted it so badly. And maybe on a day that something went kind of right or something went kind of in her favor, she's wondering, well, is this freedom? I got to do something that I wanted to do today. Is this freedom? So it's amazing to me that I guess she could grow up, be brought up having no concept of truly what freedom is, but knowing that that is what she needs to be, and that's what she deserved to be, and that's what she would fight for other people to be. Just the idea of freedom. She talks about being called rebellious as a young girl, and an incident where she stole a sugar cube, and she wondered if that was freedom. Just the taste of the sugar cube, and just doing something that she shouldn't be doing is rebellion. Freedom. She talks about how other than her brothers, that she would not convince anyone ever to try to run, because she said that basically freedom is like this burning desire that you have to have on the inside, that nothing or no one can stop. And once you have that, then she knows that she can help you. But she knew that she couldn't be trying to convince people that they needed to be free and then having to prepare them to run and everything. She tried with her brothers. It didn't work. She says she would never do it with anyone again. And again, I'm not going over everything that she mentioned in her speech, just kind of some of the things that stood out to me. I also found it fascinating, and I don't know if everything that was in the speech was even true, but when she said that she wouldn't cry when she was beat, basically because she didn't want to give her master the satisfaction of knowing that he or she was breaking her. And so it was almost like, I think she said that she began to enjoy the pain. And that's something that I couldn't imagine. And I'm really sitting here, you guys, trying to hold back tears as I talk about this. And I didn't think that it would be that emotional. There were parts of the episode that kind of got to me, and definitely things that made me kind of just say, yeah, that's right. But by the time it was over, I was almost in tears. And just to think of the struggle that our ancestors went through to get out of a bondage that they never should have been in, and to for them to know, or for some of them at least to know that they deserved something much better, that they deserved something different than what they had, is still fascinating to me. But yeah, when she talked about not crying when she was beaten, something that I couldn't imagine, because it's funny to me when I talk about slavery amongst my black friends, there's always at least one or two people who are just like, oh man, I would have been like Nat Turner, I would have been like Harriet Tubman, I would have been, and they're just saying what they would have done, and they know they wouldn't have been, if Master would have beat me, it only took him one time before, I jumped on his ass or something, and you don't know what you would have done in that situation, and it's very easy for us to say in 2017 what we would have done and what we wouldn't have stood for if we had been in that position. But let's just be real, if you could get past the mental and emotional and spiritual and physical breaking of you that was done, maybe you could have done all those things. So it's always just amazing to me when I read a story of one person, whether it be a Harriet Tubman or, a Frederick Douglass or someone, just anyone who was willing to run or who was willing to fight, a Nat Turner, to rebel, anyone, it just makes me feel proud and gives me chills, honestly. And anyway, she talked about knowing versus believing. And she basically, it was that the knowing that she was in bondage, but believing that she would be free. And it was, to me, what I took away from that was that she had to see it in her mind, or see it in her mind's eye first, that herself free, before she could get there. She had to know that she deserved it, had to believe that it would happen for her. And I think that that's true in almost anything in life, that we have to have that visual picture of it before we'll actually get it. And when she made it to Freedom, I think Pennsylvania, she wondered if she would look different. I think that, they show her like looking at her hands, like, do my hands look different now? There's nobody here to welcome me at the pearly gates of freedom, and I think that she maybe was expecting some transformation, kind of like what we see heaven depicted as in movies once she got to freedom, but it wasn't that. And she talked about having been basically a house girl when she was in bondage and how she hated that kind of work. But when she got to freedom, that was something that she did. But now it was different because this was something that she was two things. She was willingly choosing to do it, and she was getting paid to do it. She had a choice. This is now a job. It's not just your tasks as a slave. You're going to clean this house. And so, yeah, I think that she kind of talked about the irony of running from that kind of work to only end up doing the same kind of work once she did get free. And she talked about networking with people who would help along the way, basically. I guess if you want to say that they were part of the Underground Railroad. I don't know that everyone necessarily was an abolitionist who helped out. Maybe someone just had a kind heart on some particular day, but she was networking with people so that when it was time for her to go back and get her family, she would know where to go, know which houses to stop at, know where were safe places to go, and where she could get the resources that she needed to move around. And to me, it's very amazing that this woman at that day and age was able to be that resourceful to gather those resources together to get not only her family, but at least a couple or a few hundred other people to freedom. And she talked about running in the winter when the nights were longer. And for me personally, I am someone who hates the cold. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I've been living in the Caribbean for the last year. And I just can't. I'm still in Texas now on a visit, and everybody runs their AC like so high, and I've been cold like the whole time that I've been here, like uncomfortably cold. I'm wearing my shorts now and a short sleeve shirt, but I have this little blanket here that I pretty much keep around me like all the time because I haven't adapted to people just running their AC, and it's such an uncomfortable thing to me. And so for me to just think about how I'm uncomfortable, the AC is on like 73 degrees right now. It's about 80 something degrees outside, and that's uncomfortable. Not to say that would stop me from getting to something important like my freedom, but to think that she intentionally, I'm going to run in the winter because that's when I got to get my family. And for me to think about, and winter in Houston is a mild winter. We have like a lot of 70 degree days, 80 degree days, or even a thing in a Houston winter. But to know that she would be coming from Pennsylvania or Canada and, making all these runs and stays to have a real winter to help people, that just shows so much determination to me. And She also talked about going back to get the man who was her husband, whose name she took, John Tubman, and finding that once she got back to go and get him, that he was living with another woman as, his wife. And I'm sure, like, I cannot imagine the pain, that must have caused. But she said, she uh, chalked it up to he was able to live and move on without her, and that's what she needed to be able to do as well. But I'm like, who leaves Harriet Tubman? Like, and what could this other woman have had on Harriet Tubman? You know what I mean? So it's just, to me, that's absolutely crazy. And yeah, that blew my mind. But anyway, she also talked about making trips to help other runners get to freedom, and at a point not being able to take them to Pennsylvania because she couldn't trust what was going on in America because of the fugitive slave law. She was having to take them now to Canada. And I forgot the way that she described it, but I think that she said something about maybe the ground being shaky or unsettled or something, that she just knew she couldn't trust what was going on in America. And so this woman, just everything about her is mind blowing to me. She gets to the point where she starts talking about John Brown, and that's when her speech is finally broken up because there's a disruption, and some men basically start debating about John Brown's tactics, being too violent, and Elizabeth had to put those men in check and say, hey, we're here to hear Harriet, give her some respect and let's let her finish this speech. So other than that, kudos to this actress, Aisha Hines, because she basically gave a 40-minute monologue that was quite moving and quite stirring as Harriet Tubman. And I just imagine that some of us, I will say that I got sucked in for a minute and just felt like, we were listening to Harriet Tubman. So this woman, I'd never heard of her before, Underground, but I understand that she's on some other show it's currently on, and I don't know what her projects were before this, but as Harriet Tubman, kudos, A+, 100%, Aisha Hines. Thank you. You did that. No one can take that from you. You gave an amazing performance. You've been doing an amazing performance this season as Harriet Tubman, but that episode 6, you blew me away. So yeah, thank you for that. So other than the disruption, it was all Harriet, and it spoke to me. This episode spoke to me right where I am today. I only respected and loved Harriet Tubman even more after hearing this speech that was put together and that was done so beautifully in this episode. And this was a speech for 2017, even though it's supposed to be 1850 whatever at the time of this speech in the episode. This was a speech for now. And I'm seeing a couple of constant themes running in Underground in this season. And one seems to be the theme that freedom is not necessarily a place, but a state of mind. And that's one thing that I took away from her speech. And she said something to the effect near the end of the speech that he will provide, and he, meaning God, I believe is what she meant, will provide, but you have to do your part. And to me, that's like just straight biblical faith without works is dead. And I couldn't agree more. And when she looked into the camera and basically, said, ain't nobody get to sit this one out. I think that's how she ended it. Ain't nobody get to sit this one out. You hear me? And when she looked at that camera, I don't know, something just went through me. And also, it brought me to think of another theme that we constantly see in season 2, citizen or soldier. What are you going to make the choice to be? And that's for the ones who got to freedom now that they're free. You know, Kato, what are you going to do? Rosalie, what are you going to do? We see that she's, going back and getting more. It's not just now I'm free, now I can just be an American citizen. And so definitely some things that we could take from that speech and apply to many areas in our lives today, with things that are going on socially in our current world. And so that I don't cry and so that I don't run over time for this, I just want to go on and end it. But again, thank Joe Pekaski and Misha Green and John Legend and Aisha Hines and all these wonderful actors and actresses, this full cast and crew for this show. It is so amazing. And again, let me reference those ladies: TW23, Nicole, Nichelle, and My Twisted Life with Poetry. If you're just into underground reviews, check out their channels too. I believe that you'll find their reviews to be entertaining. And I hope that you enjoyed this. I enjoyed the episode, loved the episode. Trying honestly not to get choked up here, so let me go on and just cut it short. I love Harriet Tubman. I don't know what else to say. I love her, I admire her, and this was just done so beautifully. So anyway, wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, great weekend, great Sunday. Or is it Saturday? No, it's Sunday as I'm recording this. I'm still kind of in vacation mode, so forgive me, but I will try to be back more promptly with the review for episode 7. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope that you all have a great day, and I will see you all soon on the next one. Bye-bye.